My working assumption is, since the crash, is that we're going to hit a financial or economical downturn sometime along the way, because that on average something happens, financial markets, etc., every 10 years on average. Maybe not as horrific as the 2008 crash, but something on average happens every 10 years. So instead of saying what if the market crashes, I'm saying it's going to crash or something's going to happen. Let me embrace it, not ignore it, not fear from it. Work under the assumption it's coming, right? So the next one is coming, like the earthquake. When? Nobody knows. So if I know it's coming, I want to make decisions right now about what I buy, where I buy, when in the back of my mind or back of the decisions, part of the very important aspect is I want to buy in locations that are resilient and have a greater chance of surviving the next downturn.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins.
What if boring was the new sexy in real estate investing? In today's episode, you'll hear how one investor turned over 5,000 deals across 40 plus US markets into a system, not a hustle, and how you can do the same without getting pulled into TikTok tactics or flashy flips. Today, I'm joined by Dani Beit-Or, founder of Simply Do It, a real estate investing veteran who calls the 2008 crash his PhD. With 2 decades of battle-tested experience and a deep understanding of what works for busy professionals, Dani is here to walk us through his framework for smart, scalable, long-term wealth. Here we go. All right, we are here. We are on the other side. I'm coming back from a vacation, so I'm just getting back into it. And to do it, no other better place than now with our guest, Dani, here today. Welcome to the show, Dani.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. And I'm sure you get the opportunity to take a few vacations yourself, right? Being in the real estate world. You've helped others buy over 5,000 properties, but let's rewind first. Sure. What was the very first deal you did and what did you learn from it?
Oh, that's terrific. I love that question because the first deal that I did, I was a young engineer working for the corporate world in Europe, bought my first sight unseen, another country in the US outside of Phoenix, completely sight unseen. In 2002, Google was a startup, no Zillow, no all that beautiful tools that we have at our disposal today, completely remotely. I even remember the number, 127,000 and change. A brand new home from the builder, just a nice community outside of Phoenix. And that was my first investment. The first thing that I learned is, I don't know why, but nobody prepared me mentally for it. Nobody told me. I thought you close on a Monday and you list it out on a Tuesday. Right? That was just in my mind. And when 45 days after, the house did not rent, I was freaking out. And I fully understand today when my clients call me and they're 30, 45, even 60 days, it's still vacant. I get that, remember that reaction very well. It's like ingrained in my DNA, in my memory DNA. But I wish someone told me, like when I tell my clients, listen, it's going to take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks. No guarantee, but at least you're mentally prepared. So that was the first lesson. The second lesson was a few years forward. I'm now in the States. I'm living in the States in California. The house is in Arizona, and I decide to go and check it out, probably for the first time. And I'm talking about maybe 2004 or 5. So I have owned this house for 2 to 3 years. And I get to the property on a trip, and I come in, and I'm like, oh my God. 4 kids, 2 dogs, hamster, and a bunny in my house. Right? Now, I got to tell you something. First reaction is, oh, shoot. This is not good, and nobody told me about it. And actually, they're not supposed to have all those pets, whatever you want to call it, human pets, real pets, in the house without reporting, without paying, whatever. Anyway, I came back, a few days later. I catch my breath. I take a breather. I relax a little bit, and then I say, wait. This family has been in my house living for the past 3 years or so. In those 3 years, I think they were late to pay the rent twice. In 3 years, only late, not pay, just, and I'm like, a lot of stability is coming from this house. I'm actually pleasantly surprised they were only late twice, where when you're running a zoo in Arizona, I would expect for you to be late a little bit longer than that, right? And more than that. So that was the second lesson that I actually said, okay, pets, nobody take the zoo, multiple kids. I don't like it, but I see the stability that comes with it. So I actually learned to appreciate it. I also did a mental note to myself. I said, when they decide to move out, just make sure nobody is reimbursing them for the security deposit, because I'm going to use it completely. And they stayed 5.5 years with being late twice on rent while running a zoo. So respect. So that was our kind of, this is what I call sometimes, years later, I kind of call those situations, on my end, I call it a conventional stupidity, right? Because people, when you tell something, if I can easily tell you that story, how terrible the situation was and how difficult, and then you don't realize that in reality, that's actually created a lot of stability for my rental property. So for me, it's not about the pet story, it's about what is the outcome as an investor, the stability, no tenant turnover, for 5.5 years, I'll take it. Usually I'll take it.
Yeah. That's great. And, being able to expect or have clear expectations on that time to market a property is really important. And then, the idea of who you're allowing in, you've got your screening processes, but really taking a step back and looking at it like, hey, these guys are in, they're paying the rent. I've got one property that the tenants have paid for, and they've been in there the whole time. When they come out of there, it's going to be a pretty healthy turn when they do come out of there in regards to cost, but it's been stable. Very cool. Something that was not stable is this time period in 2008. And you talk about it as being your real estate PhD. Can you take us into that period and what changed for you?
Absolutely. So first of all, I don't have a PhD officially. I just been when in 2004 and 5, I started investing more heavily in real estate, pursuing my own goals, financial goals, achieving them in my 5 years goal. I was able to achieve them in about 2.5 years in number of properties, etc. So that means in 2006-ish, 7, I'm already hitting my goals for myself, personal goals for myself. And then I ran into the financial crash of 2008. And the financial crash of 2008 really exposed, it was so devastating on so many levels. It really exposed all the weaknesses of my strategy, of the strategy that I was following, on problems, issues that brought all the, lack of a better term, crap to the surface, right? And what I decided as soon as the crash I realized early on, I realized what's going on. Early on, luckily for me, because I made a lot of decisions based on that. But what I decided, first of all, is that I thought to myself, if I have clients that I've helped acquire, good leadership shows when, if they look up to me when everything is fine, good leadership will show when things are not fine, right? So I said, I'm not going to disappear. That's one. And I made a promise with myself, like a pact with myself. Everyone that calls me, no matter what, I'm going to pick up the phone or call back, and I'm going to be there. Maybe to a shoulder to cry on, maybe to vent. Sometimes people they need it. When things go bad, they need someone to blame. Okay, I'll take the blame if that helps you. But more importantly, I wanted to be there to show presence. I wanted to share what I am dealing with myself and learning with myself, so I can contribute back to their situation and be helpful after the complaining phase of the call. I would say, hey, here's a couple things we can do. So that I had to deal with stuff myself. I had to dig into problems and situations in multiple states in order to find the best possible way to come out of that situation for myself, but also to help my clients with similar situations. And I wanted to be there to share that with them. So maybe I can contribute to their pain or problems or minimize the issues. And also maybe that client has been through something themselves that they found out that they can share back with me. So for me, that 2008, 9, and 10 primarily. It did last beyond into 2011 and 12, but mainly 2008 through 10, those 3 years, a lot of calls of negative content, complaining, even crying, blaming, everything, unpleasant. But I just thought that's the right thing to do, and I came to it from like a position of I'm going to be helpful, and I'm going to distract all the blame, so to speak, and all the negativity. And I was helpful to my clients. And you know what? Not all of them, but many actually years back even reminded me, I owe you. I'm like, what do you owe me for? You were there. You answered. Because I've seen a lot of people, my peers at that time, I've seen a lot of them disappear, completely vanishing, right? Not everybody, but I've seen a lot of that disappeared. By the way, there's a bunch that I've never seen since, and there's quite a few that I've seen disappearing, doing a disappearing act during the crash, and when everything was booming, they show up all over again as if nothing. And I was appalled by it, but it's not my business to decide how they want to handle their affairs. So for me, that was something that I had to dive in, and I wanted to leverage that to my clients and help them run out of that situation. And the outcome, without realizing it, when a catastrophe comes, you don't realize the benefits of it while you're working through or going through it. But on the other side, or a few years later, it's like, oh my God, I have so much more knowledge. I have so much more understanding, in-depth understanding on different aspects of real estate. And that kind of elevated my knowledge, my expertise. And the second promise I made at that point is like, I'm going to bring all that bad experiences and I'm going to share it with my clients so they can use my bad journey or not so good journey to their benefit and help them prevent those problems to begin with. And I did, and I still do.
Yeah. And in just kind of like a higher, I guess, perspective of that time period, those foreclosures and notes being called really crushed the market value of properties. But as long as the note wasn't called and you had a tenant who was able to pay rent, you were still servicing that note. So things were still moving on. But having the ability to lean on those around you is really important. That's why your network is your net worth. And especially in those times that you're leaning on the right people, because cycles filter people.
Correct.
Cycles filter companies, cycle filter gurus. It's very interesting. Yeah. Many of our listeners are doctors, high-income professionals. What patterns or mistakes do you see investors like that making earlier on?
Yeah. Well, I think that from my 20 years of experience working with thousands of investors, buying so many properties, I've gained the privilege of seeing how people behave over 20 years, repetitive patterns along a process of buying rental properties. And I think that I like to divide, unofficially my world into two. There's a lot of information out there that tells you no money down, do this, do the creative deals, right? There's nothing bad with creative deals. The challenge with creative deals, it's great, but the challenge with creative deals, like wholesaling or no money down or subject to, a lot of strategies to slice this investment world. The problem with the creative deals is that someone just the other day said it's like the unicorn. They do exist, but you need to work so hard to find the one good deal that follows into that category. And that's a lot of time and energy that busy professionals don't usually have. Now, so that's one world. And I think a lot of people are exposed to the TikTok, to the Facebook, to the ads that are normally talking about this. There is a second world that usually is not well promoted or advertised. It's the boring real estate. And for boring real estate just means in my world, and that's what I try to focus on, because that's most of my clients are busy professionals, is buy a nice piece of property, hold it long term. It's okay. It's okay. You can quote me on that, to buy it at around market value. You don't have to find the 25% below market value, and hold it multiple years. Quality long term, right? What have you done? You find a house, you bought it, you held it, and you hold it for 5+ years. And I can, how and you'll do very well. And I'll prove you that point in my own personal example. Over the years, I've done a lot of flips as well. So mostly I buy long-term rentals, or most of my clients buy long-term rentals. Exactly like I said, boring real estate, upper, middle class, tenants or communities, buy it at around market value, hold it for 5, 7, 10 years or more, right? And just let it sit there and grow. Real estate loves time. Let it sit there and grow, right? Ideally with a mortgage, even better. There are a few years that I've done about close to 100 flips, all out-of-state flips. 90 flips, 80 were anywhere from amazing to okay, and 10 were catastrophic. Going back to any of them, mostly the 80 that were anywhere from okay to amazing, almost every single one of them, I wish I kept and not sold in a flip. And many times I bought them at fair market value, not below market value. So if you are a busy professional and you are drawn into those systems, that wholesaling, subject to, and all those creative, which I do it. This is what I do day in and day out. I have the time for it. I have the bandwidth for it. I have the knowledge. I have the comfort zone. But if you're a busy professional and you're chasing those deals, you may find that it'll take you 6 months, 9 months, even a year to find a deal that makes sense to you, and you may not even be able to execute it. How about this? Find a house that will cost you 3 to 4 hours to come up with a decision, right? Maybe 5 hours to come up with a decision, and just buy that house and let it sit in the background, not interfering with your your busy lifestyle, but actually still kind of in the background of your life. And then when you see that it works, buy another one. And when you see that it works, buy another one. Maybe do all in 1 year, maybe do a property per year, maybe 2 per year, whatever. But slowly accumulate those things while you're focusing on your busy lifestyle, on your busy work, on your busy mind, being preoccupied with different things, and letting just boring, simple, non-creative real estate operate in the back of your life and background of your life. And I want to emphasize, this is not envelope money, buy and forget, 100% passive. This is when you own any type of a tiny business, even a rental property, it will require some of your time and attention to buy, and some of your time and attention while things happen with that property ongoingly. But if you buy the boring one, it will not empower you completely. It will just be something that you need to deal with here, maybe once a week, twice, 3 times a month, answer questions, do a follow-up, and just make sure you supervise all this activity, moving along in your benefit. And what have you done? Nothing sexy in terms of subject to, and I don't know, nice house in a nice area. You bought it, you rent it out, you use a property manager, done. So easy. People are just, it lacks the sexiness, right? It lacks the sexiness, right? So if you're a busy professional, you probably want to focus on that and not chasing that creative ones. And if, which again, I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying it takes a lot of energy, a lot of time and energy to get to the point that you execute, and they're challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned there, quality and long-term, that simple piece lies in that quality and long-term, because if the tenant can service the note, can service the mortgage, the property is paying for itself, you're kind of leveraging that other, profit center of appreciation. Because also what I like what you said is real estate loves time. And the longer that this stretches out, the longer the tenant service the note, the better that this boring investment is going to be. And quality is where it gets boring, because it doesn't have to be, this amazing place that everybody's dying to live in. It just has to be neat, clean, and mechanically sound, and then that's where we get the quality property. That's where we get the quality tenant. That's where we get a boring investment. That's puts smiles on my face, keeps tenants in place, limits tenant turnovers. But the quality piece can come down to markets, right? So what key ingredients of an investment worthy market do you see?
So absolutely, that's a great question, and that was very refined. I knew before the crash, but even more refined after the crash. So when I talk about boring has another element to it when choosing a market, and that's a really 2008 crash determination. I call it the resilient factor. So my working assumption is, since the crash, is that we're going to hit a financial or economical downturn sometime along the way, because that on average something happens, financial markets, etc., every 10 years on average. Maybe not as horrific as the 2008 crash, but something on average happens every 10 years. So instead of saying what if the market crashes, I'm saying it's going to crash or something's going to happen. Let me embrace it, not ignore it, not fear from it. Work under the assumption it's coming, right? So the next one is coming, like the earthquake. When? Nobody knows. So if I know it's coming, I want to make decisions right now about what I buy, where I buy, when in the back of my mind or back of the decisions, part of the very important aspect is I want to buy in locations that are resilient and have a greater chance of surviving the next downturn. And resilient for me, this is my resilient kind of formula, is I want to be in metros around the country that have at least 1.5 million people population-wise and up. There are plenty of them. So that's one. I want to be in areas.
Those are bigger areas.
Bigger metros, resilient, right? Multiple employers, big employers. Ideally, multiple big employers representing different industries. Again, that's all resilient. And then, so we have multiple big employers, multiple industries present, large metro to begin with. And then on the top of that, I want to be on the receiving end of metros that are showing population growth. There are U.S. migration patterns around the country, and they're being measured and tracked on an annual basis. And it's easy to find those patterns. I want to be where people are heading to and not where people are leaving from, right? So that's very important. Population growth. Population growth is more renters, more buyers. Just simple as that. And of course, the strength of the local economy. The local metro. On the top of that, I prefer to be in areas where the state has lender-friendly or friendlier laws, unlike California, unlike a lot of the northeast, where I want to be in a place where if I need to evict, I can do it quicker and cheaper, ideally. And there's one last item. Oh, there's two more items. First of all, it needs to make financial sense, right? So, for example, I love Metro Phoenix. I love investing there. The numbers do not work there anymore at the moment, just relatively to the price point and the rent you can get for a house. The numbers just don't work as nicely as other parts of the country. So I want to be in areas that what we can buy this boring real estate, what I can buy it for, how much it will rent for, and most importantly, what the cash flow would be. A lot of people only measure purchase price rent, not realizing the bottom line can be very different between two states, primarily due to property taxes and insurance, right? People just stay on superficial. That's too bad. It's not just about the rent, it's about the cash flow. So measuring and making sure those numbers are there. And then I have what I call the important secondary. And for me, the important secondary is I want to not be in harsh winters areas. Because in a harsh winter, there's a higher chance of two things happening. First of all, selling your house in the winter or leasing your house in the winter in a harsh area like Chicago and the Northeast, it's way more challenging. From experience, I've been there. I know that. So that's one. The second thing, if your house is vacant in the winter, there is a higher chance that the heater will fail and it will still impact not only your pipes, but your floors and your paint. It will crack and all of that. And even if you have insurance, it's a lot of hassle, right? So I rather buy in places where I can rent and lease year round, and the chances of freezing, are smaller, and that will just make my life a little bit more peaceful and quiet without reducing the chances of extra issues. We're going to always have issues with owning. I want to eliminate those things. And you know what? Kind of funny. Only I realized it maybe like 4 years ago. If the landlord-friendly states are considered red states, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it so happens that red states are also, I guess, red because they're hot by weather. So red states are both landlord-friendly and weather-wise, and blue states are also less landlord-friendly or tenant-friendly and weather-wise also not my favorite. So that's kind of my formula to begin searching. Once I find a market that follows all those, aspects, it's down to the numbers, right? Can I buy it for this much, rent it for this much? But I need to check the cash flow as well. It cannot be just ending there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I call it an outside-in perspective, looking at those red versus blue states to get to the landlord-friendly as opposed to tenant-friendly.
Exactly.
And then where are our 1.5 million MSAs, populations that have a steady growth, not volatile growth, but a steady growth in population, diverse job force. And then when it comes to the power punch of our money, and just from the outside in, I'm sure you've heard the 1% rule. It's a quick, dirty rule how to get down to, does this rent work for this market value property? But even if the rent works on a 1% rule, it doesn't take into effect the property taxes and insurance. So you got to really get dialed in, and then double down on the secondary you talked about, not being in cold places because slip and falls happen as well as pipes freeze. And I'm not a friend of those places either where it gets cold. I lived there for too long. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I love how you package that all in, and it really puts you in a few different spots here in the U.S. That could be a lot to take in for, somebody who's just starting.
I can tell you a little story about the 1%, personal story about the 1% rule.
Yeah. Yep.
So I also followed that 1% rule. And I'm just going to say, for those who don't know, simply put, the 1% rule says, if you buy a $150,000 home, you want to rent it for $1,500 a month. That's the 1% rule, just so we're all on the same page. I followed that rule of thumb for many years. And then about 10 years ago, give or take, maybe 11 years ago, I decided I need to go to the next market. And I went to and researched Nashville, Tennessee. I come into Nashville and I do my 1% rule test. And I'm like, I'm only getting, instead of 1%, I'm getting 0.75%. That's not good. I disqualified Nashville. I come back a year later, because I'm like, okay, what am I missing? This time I'm like, hey, dude.
Massive growth.
I need to not yet, before.
Okay.
I actually come back 1 year later and I do the same measurement. I get instead of 1%, the 0.75. But then this time I do something different. I evaluate and analyze 9 properties in different areas, completely underwriting like we always do with our properties. But I go through the full process, take my time, carefully analyze 9 properties representing different price point and different locations, and they're all getting almost 0.75 give or take percent. Then I look at when I do this full analysis, I get to the cash flow, and I see that the cash flow on, let's say, $150,000 home back then in Nashville is a higher cash flow, significantly higher cash flow than the 150 in Dallas-Fort Worth. Wait, did I just miss something here? What am I missing here? And that's when I realized the 1% rule is a rule of thumb that I do not recommend using. I think it's very superficial and misleading. And when you actually measure it all the way to the actual cash flow, right, that's when you see the results. And now, like, I actually beat myself up that I missed a full year of quality properties in Nashville. We were not late to Nashville, but I wish I had it a year earlier. And that was a lesson learned. Why not to use the 1% rule? By the way, over the past 6 years or so, it almost doesn't work unless you go to a really lower end properties. So, I
And
would
then you
pitch that
lose the
idea
boringness.
altogether. Yeah,
Yeah, you lose the boringness because the lower end property have lower end tenants,
correct.
and
Yeah,
then bigger problems kind of deal. So, yeah, very interesting. And keeping in mind that cash flow thing is huge, the taxes
yes,
and insurance, and how that plays into that, and really having a napkin equation is good as long as you understand. Just like you're saying, that 1% rule, it doesn't take into effect the other pieces, the taxes and insurance piece. So, how does that perform on an apples to apples kind of comparison?
exactly. Yeah,
Uh, so you've seen deals structured in so many different ways.
true.
You talked about it, wanting the boring ones and just kind of reaching for those. But what's an unconventional structure that's worked out well for yourself or your clients?
Yeah. So I've done a deal a year ago where it's a subject to. So I took over a property where the seller's mortgage is still in place and I'm paying for that mortgage. It's a subject to. Uh, it's okay. It has its little kinks. Not even a year in, there's some challenges that I still need to work with because of the subject to. Not something catastrophic, but that's one. I'm under contract and I'm trying to work through a VA loan assumption. VA loan assumption is when, unlike the subject to, where I don't assume the loan myself, in a VA loan assumption, I do assume or plan to assume the loan from the seller. So that's a VA loan assumption that I'm waiting for a secondary review because they had some problems. Never mind, that's not interesting. And in that case, also the seller is going to lease back the property at fair market value for 12 months. And then I did a deal about 2.5, 3 months ago where the seller listed back from me for 2 years and has an option to buy that property back from me in 2 years after. So that means February of 2026 for $60,000. He has an option to buy the property. I bought that property, what I thought is about 85, 90,000 below market value. When the appraisal came back, it actually, an independent appraisal showed us it's 110, 115 more. So I immediately had some extra little benefit or bonus there, which is very nice. The option that seller, who's now my renter, signed clearly state there's some guidelines. One of those guidelines, he cannot be late on the rent, if he gets evicted or abandon the property, the option is revoked. He was late multiple times already. Not only that, I actually been through eviction hearing with him, I was granted an eviction. We were able to work things out in terms of payments. So right now, it's all recent, right? It's all in the past several months. So right now he's current, but he is very on the edge. And technically, option-wise, the option is revoked. So he's not going to be able to exercise. So that means I have a house that I bought for 100,000-ish below market value with a tenant inside, currently paying a little bit below market rent. The day he moves out, I can increase it right now by $500 or $600 higher if I get a new tenant. And if I move him out or he moves out because on eviction, then I'll be able to do that as well. So that's where I am with this one. Very not traditional. I always buy with inspection. So every one of those houses been through the inspection or will be if it's still depending on the process. So those are the type of creative deals I'm kind of looking into more and more these days.
Yeah. And the subject to one, just kind of caution in the wind on, when that changes title, when title changes, you always have that a potential for the note being called. So as long as you got the background, the means to fund that, if it is called, you're good to go.
Correct.
And so I guess that's a little more difficult of a strategy, not quite as simple, especially when we're talking with insurance and who's paying the mortgage and how access to accounts and what's the principal balance. Like there's a lot that goes into that. But when somebody's first starting and they say, I want to buy a rental property, what's the first thing you want to understand about them before offering advice?
I'm trying to kind of understand from them a little bit what they're trying to accomplish, like more of a big picture, what they're trying to accomplish for their own sake. Out of that, if they're a little bit more focused on appreciation or cash flow, which is really different on the stage you are in your life, age and different stages. And then very quickly, we try to help them, because most people don't know what a good deal for them looks like, for that person looks like. And that is such a, it's not a simple question, but it's not a complicated question, yet most people don't even think about it, or don't give enough idea about what is a good property for me, right? The person. And that's something we take the time early on. We've also developed a few mechanisms how to help a person to come up with the answer, because what I see a lot of people do is, as soon as they understand they want to invest in real estate, they start signing up to lists of properties, right? Whatever, online, or this list or this group, whatever. And they start getting those exposure to a lot of properties, and it can be overwhelming. And how can you if you're a beginner, how would you know what a good deal looks like for you? Based on the photos? I hope not, right? So we help them kind of solidify or clarify, at least for now, right? We may go back and change it after they do 1 or 2 or 5 deals, but at least to get started, age-wise, cash flow-wise, price-wise, size, location, a lot of those things, we try, even simple stuff, we try schools, and that sets that, I call it the benchmark parameters for them. And once you are, as an individual, and if you're someone of your listeners are listening to this, you should do that exercise with yourself if you can, because if you're an investor and you have your simple criteria set up, bedrooms, bathrooms, price, cash flow, yes mortgage, no mortgage, age of the house, price, garage, pool, yes, no, all those, this is simple. This is not complicated stuff. But once you have those 5, 10, 15 parameters identified by you individually, because based on your values, then every property that, if this is your list, every property that you bring in and you kind of try to compare to this one, and you say, okay, it matches or not. And if it's not even close to match, drop it. Don't waste time over it. And if it matches or is close, maybe spend some time over it. And if it exceeds, definitely spend time over it, right? Mm-hmm. Most people don't do that. They're just sucking properties from a fire hose. That's not beneficial. It's actually confusing, overwhelming.
Yeah. So, if you don't know what you're looking for, how do you expect to find it? Knowing that deal that looks good for you, even a little bit further past that buy window, bedrooms, bathrooms, house location, and all that, but also what, that return and what the time involved is going to look like. What asset class is that? I mean, there's so much of that goes into it. Right. Just to keep it down to being able to find what you're looking for, you have to know what you're looking for. Exactly. Now, there's some listeners out there that have already bought a property or two. And for those listeners, what's usually holding them back from scaling further?
Okay. I think that my biggest guess would be that they are many times get overwhelmed with how much noise in the system there is. Now, it can be a lot of noise if they bought a lower end property with more turnover, or they buy or less noise, but there's always noise in the system. And if you're overwhelmed with the noise, even if it's small amount of noise, then you are focused on the lack of communication or maintenance calls or supervising the property managers. You're focusing on the problems, and I get it. They suck you in, and I get it. And you don't step back for a moment to realize what's happening here, right? Usually, what I call it the magical milestone. Usually, after 2 years, when someone owned a property and they've had enough of those noise incidents, but 2 years later, in this magical milestone, they realize, wait, what just happened here? In 2 years, I had issues, move out, maybe eviction, repairs, miscommunication, all those things will happen. I promise, right? But Look at how much cash flow I've generated, even if not a lot. How much cash flow I've generated over those 2 years. Look at how much appreciation I've made, right? Even if not a lot, I made some 20,000, 30,000. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, there's 2 years. If I sum up all the hours I spent, you know what? Let's just call it 20 hours in 2 years, right? 30 hours in 20 years. But look how much I was able to gain just from cash flow, a little bit of cash flow, a little bit of appreciation, right? Not factoring any tax benefits or maybe principal reduction if there is any. And then people are like, oh my God, what's happening here? And that usually the magical milestone that people realize I need more of that, because relatively to the effort, right, I made a lot of money, right? Rather in the background of my life. And not talking about flipping. I'm talking about holding rental properties that I'm not day in, day out managing myself and doing it. So I think what happens is people get stuck on the challenges and the noise and the friction, which I fully get it, or they're very disappointed by how the property manager is not treating them or not treating the property as if he owns the property, because they have this notion that the property manager is me when I'm not there, which is not correct, which is also not completely wrong, right? But it's a little bit in between. So they have to go through a lot of realizations, and then there may be disappointments, and maybe they don't realize it's actually working better than they think. They're just focused on the problems. And I see it so many times. The first year or 2 or 3, even my clients, they get stressed out over small stuff, right? And then, by the way, if you own one property, every little thing is huge. It's unbelievably huge. They told me, like the property manager said, it's going to cost $450, and it ended up being $500. Oh, come on, man. Like, really, I kid you not, right? They don't take a breather and don't realize what's happening here and how financial impact it will have on their life. And then they get hung on that and they do not execute forward. And if your listeners want to take something that, for me personally, and for many of my more experienced investors, I always hear the following. And even those who are not fully experienced but have done it for 4 or 5 years and few properties, it always comes back and say, I wish I bought more. I wish I started sooner, or I bought earlier. I wish I didn't wait as much. Always, 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 right? And I also mean those who can have the financial means. If some of my clients, I know they want to buy and they're just waiting to save more cash for another down payment, I get it. But usually those execute the minute they can. A lot of people, they're focused on the noise, which can be daunting, but you're missing the point.
The noise is like a magnet that pulls you in.
Oh my God.
It reduces your perspective. And when you're zoomed in on this day, this problem, this property manager, this tenant, and you can't pull back out. So many times I'm talking with people, I'm trying to just, in my mind, I'm very visual, like pull your head away from everything. Stretch it back. Instead of looking at 30 days and 60 days, look at 1 year, 2 year, even that 5-year plan where we even struggle the first 2 years to get things stabilized and get through that. Even at 5 years, you take the most conservative numbers at 5 years, it's going to lighten your load a little bit in these 30, 60, 90 days that you're dealing with. But that noise is like a magnet. It pulls you in and it adjusts your perspective.
Oh, true.
Step back, open up your eyes and let it stretch, right? Let it stretch.
Look at the big picture.
Yes, big picture. That's right. Noise is like a magnet for sure. Yeah. Hey, if you were starting from scratch today, what market or asset type would you target first and why?
Listen, again, if I'm assuming I'm a busy, younger, older, professional, that I'm busy with my life, and I want that noise we just talked about factor to the lowest, buy a nice rental property, in states that make sense, metros that make sense financially, use a property manager. It's not going to be buy and forget. It's not going to be 100% passive. But if you embrace the fact that you will hold it for many years to come, ideally with a mortgage, you will probably do very well just by having one. Having one is a bittersweet because you don't really get the taste of, oh my God, 10 years later, I only did $250,000 in appreciation or more. which is great, amazing. But wouldn't it be better if you had 2 or 3 or 4 of those, even if not buy them immediately? And by the way, if you get it and you think it's working, exactly back to your question, I always wonder some of my clients stop after 5 years. Why?
Mm-hmm.
And I know their financial situation, and it's not the money, right? Why did you stop after 5 years? After a few years of buying, let's just say 5 properties, when you could have bought 7 or 8? Or I could have helped you after 5 years doing 1031 exchange and moving your 5 properties through a 1031 exchange mechanism and make it 8 properties without bringing more cash in. And we've done that, but some of my clients even my clients get stuck. I don't know why. Yeah, it's kind of a for me.
Simply put, quality and long term, like you said before, because real estate likes time. Real estate loves time. That simple path, and even in the first few properties that I bought, seeing that appreciation, so many years later is like, wow, that is crazy. But speaking of simple and simply, there's this thing you call Simply Do It. Yes. Tell us a little more about that.
So my company, which I kind of completely, I founded after the crash of 2008 because I needed a clean slate on one end, most from the business perspective, like better processes, better analysis, better everything. So that was the lessons learned from the crash. It was me rebuilding our operation from scratch, bringing the knowledge that I just gained, but just doing it better. And what we do is we help individuals, families, couples buy primarily what we call out-of-state boring real estate. And I think I'll focus on 2 things. One is the knowledge, right? People come in and say, I understand, I want to buy, but it's how do I analyze? Where do I buy? What kind of property? What to be aware? All those, like understanding all those things, the knowledge, I call it the knowledge bucket. We try to help them and close that gap with the knowledge gap. But then even if I help you close the knowledge gap, if you don't have the ability to execute, how is this going to help you? We know many people that are gaining knowledge in whatever way and do nothing about it, right? So we are very focused also on helping you execute and actually buy, based on that knowledge, real estate. So we have teams that we carefully vet, markets that we carefully vet, realtors in each of those markets that we pick, vet, train, and work closely with on a weekly basis. Same thing with property management companies, lenders, insurance companies, all the service providers you can probably think of. We take our time and we bring them, and it's like a turnkey operation, not a turnkey property, but a turnkey operations that you can come in as an individual from the Northeast or from Seattle or whatever and say, I need someone to help me turn things around and help me execute, because I get it, but I'm lacking so much knowledge, or I don't have all the knowledge, and I'm also not sure who can I work with, who will manage, how to buy, how to analyze, etc. So Simply Do It is really focused on stitching all those elements together, from understanding and knowledge to execution and buying properties. And that's the service that we provide for our clientele who buy those boring type of real estate. For me, boring is sexy. I just want to mention it. I find boring super sexy.
So where can the listeners find out more about you and connect with you?
Yeah. So my web identity everywhere, it's Simply Do It. My name is Dani. And if you write Simply Do It or Simply Do It Real Estate, there's a good chance you'll end up on our website, which is simplydoit.net, or on our YouTube channel or Facebook page, all those social media outlets. We're all over. You only need to remember something a little bit challenging. Simply Do It. I know it's hard to remember.
Very nice. That's awesome. A lot of information on there. Have the listeners go out there. And Dani, thank you for your time today. Lots of knowledge, lots of experience. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Always a pleasure. I appreciate you inviting me to share with your group.
Awesome. Well, that conversation definitely reminded me that boring is beautiful when it comes to real estate. I think back through my own portfolio, our own portfolio, my family's properties, and of the properties that have been the least amount of noise, the most boring have been the best. And I tell you what, Dani just dropped truth after truth today. I back up so much of that I experienced myself. Systems over sizzle and long-term wealth over flashy flips. If you want to learn more, connect with Dani at his website, simplydoit.net. Reach out to him. It's worth a call, whether it's your first, your 10th, or your 20th. Surround yourself with people like this to grow and scale and simply just do it, right? Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Mogul MD. And most of all, thank you for your attention today.
This episode is powered by Crescent Tech. If you are looking for a CRM built for real estate investors, discover Streamline REI by Crescent Tech. Simplify, automate, close faster.